So by a show of hands, I want to ask you, has anybody never had a bout of adversity in your life? Anybody never faced a hardship, a divorce, an illness, a loss of a dear one, a month where you couldn't pay your bills? Okay, so notice nobody's hands went up, because life is full of things happening other than we thought were going to happen. So by a raise of hands, has anybody had your life turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out? Isn't that fascinating? And is that bad? Does that mean you're unhappy and miserable and you're going to because it didn't happen the way you thought it would? Does anybody recognize some of the blessings that have occurred in you not getting what you wanted? That life not giving us what we thought we wanted, sometimes we have to reach further or in a different direction and become something other than we were in order to have. Does anybody see that? So, life happens when we like it or not, and we all face an adversity, and we can either go down and stay down in a puddle of pity. I've done that. Has anybody done that? But we can get back up, right? I mean, that happens. But we can learn how to get back up faster. And we do that by accessing the spiritual quality within called resilience. So on your chair, there's a rubber band. And it's a wonderful example of what resilience is. So resilience, according to the dictionary, says it's the ability to recover quickly from illness, change, or misfortune. Did you shoot that at somebody? So the ability to recover quickly. Also, the property of a material that enables it to resume its original shape or position after being bent, stretched, compressed, or it's elasticity. So flexibility, but it's even more than flexibility. So the rubber band stretches and it comes back. So life moves us, but when we come back, but what do you imagine we come back to when we're talking of the quality of spiritual resilience? What do we come back to?
I'd like to come back to being sort of peaceful.
Come back to peace. Yeah, that's great. Anything else? What do you come back to after a disturbance happens? Because life happens, right, and we get upset. Anybody not get upset when things didn't go according to plan? Okay, good.
Come back to the center, kind of like the moderation concept, whether it's really great or really bad, after a while you just kind of come back to
a sense of equanimity, tranquility. Yeah, that's good. So because life is about change, and Lao Tzu had a disciple, Chuang Tzu, and he said, the only thing constant in life is change. That's it. I mean, that's the only thing you can count on, is that things aren't going to stay the same. And of course, we don't like that. Why don't we like that?
Comfort zone.
Comfort zone. And what does that mean to you?
His routine is very helpful to, I think anybody is just comfortable in things that they're familiar.
Okay. So you just kind of keep wanting to bring things back to the way they were. So it's called arguing with reality, right? Now that's a lot of fun. It's really useful too. Have you noticed how ineffective it is? So life happens when you're making other plans, and the mastery of a life is not to avoid circumstances shifting. It's really becoming competent in dealing with change on change terms. Like, what do I do now? How do I meet the situation with a quality of consciousness, or even moving into change from that place of peace and centeredness and equanimity? How can I engage in the moving parts and still be home? So what are some of the things you've learned so far? I think everybody's in this room fell down at least once and then stood back up again. So what have you learned about standing back up? What works for you to stand back up?
You learn something.
You learn
As
something.
long as you're open to learning from whatever it was.
Whatever it was. So if you go, this is here to teach me something, and so it's an attitude. So it's the meaning you put on it. So you could either be life tripped me up, or maybe life's trying to point me in a different direction. So that's a very powerful tool. Thank you. It's how am I going to interpret the circumstances that are occurring? Because the mind is a meaning-making machine, right? It loves to make things up. Everybody notice that? Make stuff up all the time. And I've shared this here before, but I'll share it again. It's a poem. It's, let's see how it goes. The siren sounded. The dishwasher broke. The siren broke the dishwasher. Right? Two different, non-related because we know better, but somebody who might not would do that, right? And we often don't know any better, so we'll put things together, and then we're in the conclusion that the reason she looked at me that way is because she's mad at me. And she just had an upset stomach, right? So it's the resiliency of the human spirit, the willingness to get back up one more time then we fall down, that keeps us moving forward in our lives. There's a reason why we stand up again. What do you think that is? What is it for you? In spite of the tremendous amount of adversity each one of us faces, we keep going. Because everybody in this room kept going, otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? You're not laying on the floor someplace in a puddle of pity. Puddle of pity, I like that. So what keeps you going? Yeah.
Hope that it'll get better.
And what's better?
That your life will take a better direction than what you just left behind.
Yeah, so that there's an optimism that this is serving me somehow, even though it's stinky in here at the moment. What else keeps you going?
The will to live.
The will to keep moving, the will to live. Yeah. You know, isn't that why we all love the hero's journey? You know, the Odyssey and Star Wars and Bilbo, The Hobbit, right? What are some of your favorites? What are some of your favorite hero stories? And that's like one of the biggest genre that we pay attention to. The one that's overcoming adversity. Anything from fairy tales. Nobody in the room has a favorite? Harry Potter. Yeah, that's a great one. Anybody ever see The King's Speech? Yes. Wasn't that great? That was great. And here this man is privileged. So, you know, sometimes you go, oh, poor me, my pile of pity is because was born on the wrong side of the tracks, or I was adopted and nobody loved me, or whatever the story is. But this man was born into privileged circumstances. And he had adversity, right? He was misused, maybe abused as a child, and developed a stutter, which in and of itself was challenging, but he was the second son. He wasn't that important. He wasn't born to be king until his brother abdicated, and now he was going to be king. And what was that, the first time they were going to do a radio? It was right at the beginning of radio, and he had to make a speech when England was going to get into the war. And his country is going to see him as representing them, and he has this horrible stutter. Well, what happened? He worked his butt off. Did he want to? No, but he did it anyway, because there was something greater than himself that helped him keep going. And it was something greater than himself that is represented by him serving his country. But if you really look at it, there was something greater than who he thought he was waking up, that he needed to get bigger than his mind told him he was in order to do the deed that was given him to do. He had to become king, and he had to step into his own inner majesty and his commitment to serve and break through the limitations that his mind was telling him that he couldn't do it. And he did it, and he became a beloved king. Now, if he can do it, you can do it, right? Those kind of stories show us that we can do it. And life asks us to do it. I mean, raise your hand if you don't have something you're dealing with right now that has a little bit of friction around the edges. No more hands. I'm asking you easy questions today, so you don't have to raise your hand. And thank you all for participating. I like to have a conversation because you all bring something to the group that, makes this gathering something better than I could just do by myself. So thank you. So the other beautiful part about heroes' journeys is they show us what it means to be human. We often don't want to do it. We're often frightened. We often have moments where we want to run away. But if we look at the word human in English, hu is an ancient Sanskrit word that means God. And man is the package God lives in, the animal part of us. Or some have said man comes from the word manos, which means hand. So therefore we become the hand of God. This vehicle becomes an instrument of the divine, but it's also an animal. We live in an animal body. The human spirit lives in a human body that is of form and needs to live another day. And how many of you like to face the saber-toothed tiger? Me neither. So when something happens, what does the mind tell us? Comfort zone. What does the comfort zone yell?
What does the comfort zone yell?
What? Something's happening, pushing on your comfort zone, and I call them the mind monsters. What did they say? Don't open the door, right? Run. It's going to eat us. And so that's all okay because you're human and we do that. And then it's like we calm it down and we look through the peephole and go, there's no monster out there. It's okay. I can handle this. You open the door, you let it in. And somebody over here says, what if we actually welcome change as our friend, as something they're here to serve us? That based on, if you think about it, in the past, every adversity that you've had has brought you gifts. Have you ever thought about that? The blessings in what you thought were the unwelcomed. So if moving forward, if I'd like for tonight to be of service to you in any way, it might be that when something happens, after you go eek, you shift as quickly as possible to, oh boy, I wonder what's here for me. I wonder what life is bringing to me. I wonder what it is that I'm being asked to learn or how this is going to serve my evolution. Because again, the mind is a meaning-making machine. So if I say when something happens, it's against me, then I'm not going to be as resourceful or access my resilience as quickly as if I put a different meaning on it, go, oh, what if there's something here for me and life is bringing me something I can make good use of. Does that make sense? That simple shift, it's not easy. It's a very simple shift. It's not easy because however long you've been on the planet, you've been trained to go victim. Does anybody know what I mean by that? It's always like, who's to blame for this fix I'm in? And it's just the natural occurrence of the human conditioning. It's just a culture we grew up in. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong, but once we're aware of it, we can go victorious. And we can turn adversarial situations into blessings. And on your chair, there was a card. On one side, it says victim. And the other side, it says victorious. That's for you to put in your wallet. So when you forget, you have a little pocket coach. And those of you who are online, if you want one of those cards, you can write to me. And I'll send you one. I've had people call me, can you send me 5 of those? I want to give them to my friends. So the cool things about something happening is like it's spiritual resilience is even more than just the generic resilience, I get sick, I'm better again. It actually, like what you said, we grow into something more. So imagine a fire roaring its way through a forest and it gets to a log. It actually consumes the log and becomes more than it was. It makes use of the circumstances that was blocking its way to grow itself into even more than it was before. And that is powerful to recognize that that could possibly be what's going on in our lives. So think of a time when something really, that your mind told you, like, this is dreadful, I don't know if I'm going to make it. So just really, you go ahead and do this with me. I'm not calling you. And it's past. And here you are. And this part you may want to contribute, and you don't have to. What qualities of consciousness have you developed because you endured through whatever that was? What do you have access to more now than you did prior to? Or how do you see yourself differently in ways that you're grateful for? Yes?
Take a moment and not react. Don't panic, don't react. But take a moment and, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, observe, but don't go crazy.
So I'm hearing you say you've learned how to stay calm and not go into crazy brain when something happens. Like you realize that that's a better way of engaging with things going awry. And that's a skill you've taught yourself because of things that happened in the past.
Exactly.
How many of you would recognize that as a useful quality to access in this world? Staying calm. Now I'm asked for a raise of hand, so it's almost everybody. One of the most essential abilities that any of us have is to stay calm, or else to calm ourselves down as quickly as possible. Beautiful. Thank you. I saw another hand.
Yeah, I was going to say, I look at it as don't react. You got to take it in, but respond. Because in response, you have choices. A reaction takes control of you. A response is your choice to that reaction. And I think the other thing that I've learned is compassion and empathy. Because if I've suffered this and I understand it deeply, I can reflect in others now. Mm-hmm. And it allows me to connect that way.
That's beautiful. So what this man's saying is that his own hardship has opened his heart to greater empathy and compassion for other people. And the experience of difficulty he went through has brought him to a place of deeper connection with just humanity in general. So are you more patient and kind as a result?
I think so.
But the compassion and empathy and recognizing everybody's having a human experience, and I don't have to get upset that they're upset, and shift it to maybe they're having a hard time and opening your heart. I mean, do you see that that comes from living? We weren't born knowing how to do that. We teach ourselves that because that's a higher road to travel than continually being upset that the world is upsetting us. Because that becomes a never-ending cycle of going nowhere. I call it the hamster wheel of Hades. I saw a hand over here. Okay.
I've really come to just really own this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to just be a saying, but now it's just so meaningful. And it's like everything in my life that I thought was the end of the world, either it passed or it became the new normal, and I adjusted. And everything will, no matter how much it doesn't feel like it.
What a solid foundation to stand on in life, to know that no matter what, this will pass, or if it doesn't, I'm going to figure out how to make it work. I'm fine. Basically, you're fine. No matter what's going on in there, you're fine. That's beautiful. So again, it doesn't matter how many times life knocks us down, standing up one more time, that's all we're required to do. And that standing up is what builds some of these muscles that we're going to call resilience and calm and openness and I'm okay and equanimity and compassion. Every time we stand up, we get to build more of the blessing of our humanity. We mature into our spiritual nature when we choose to stand up with the attitude of being a victor. I'm victorious, not that I'm, stand up, but I'm still really laying down in the pity puddle. But I stand up as a winner. I mean, I've had some adversities, and I can count on myself. I know I'm going to be there for myself. I'm my best friend. I didn't know that when I was younger. I didn't know that until I went through some things. And to live going through whatever hardship that I've been through, and I just want to say I'm human also, just like all of you, there's a gratitude no matter how hard it was, because what I stand in now as a result was worth every moment that I was in the pity puddle and stood up again and stood up again and stood up again. Psychological studies have shown people who are resilient in the face of adversity have something in common. What we have, I'm going to say we. What we have in common is that we are able to give positive meaning to every experience we've been through. Makes sense, right? So the past is just the past. All we can ever really do with the past is interpret it in a way that serves us. And that interpretation, the story we put on, will really nourish us and hold us upright so we can face what's next with equanimity, centeredness, peace, determination, knowing that I got me. No matter what, falls apart, falls away, I got me. Does everybody know what that feels like? Yeah. That's the spiritual warrior. You know, whatever it is, you're going to make it to the end. And in the hero's journey, is it ever a straight line? No. Now there would be no story, right? So like that woman says, we have no control over events. Dishwashers break, sirens sound. Life happens. What are we going to do about it? See, that's the key to everything. It's like we have no control over circumstances. And we have influence, of course we do, but that's a different topic. The reality is, whatever they show you on YouTube, or whatever book tells you in 5 days you can have this or that. Life's a little more, like this than this, right? And if we're good with this, and we make this the joy and the richness and the fruit, of our harvest, of our participation, this becomes a beautiful life. As opposed to people who go, I've worked with thousands of people over the course of my 30-year career. I'm not a success because I didn't get from A to B in a minute. And not realizing what a depth of person and character they've developed through all the winding turns and missteps and mistakes and wrong doors. And you've all had that kind of life. And as a result, there's so much more consciousness and kindness and compassion and patience that can be available to you and for other people. When you just embrace that as part of the human journey, your own personal hero's journey. So I'm going to say that again. Those of us who are resilient give positive meaning to every experience we've been through and are going through. So it's not the issue. It's never what the circumstances are. This is how we have joy regardless of circumstances. It's not about out here. It's about how I am in relationship to what's out here. Because we're always in relationship, but how I'm in relationship, guess what? That's your life. That's your life. Because we live in stories. We live in language. We live in the meaning we put on things. So one of my stories that I love to tell is the one about the two boys who were hired to muck out stalls. And the farmer sends them down to, okay, I'm going to come down and see you guys in about a half hour, but the shovels are on the outside of the barn door. I want you to clean out the stalls. I'll be down in a half hour to see what you're doing. So half hour, the farmer goes down, and the first kid's standing on the barn. You know how they do that thing, right? Leaning against the barn. This is not very stable. With one of those straws in his mouth, hanging out. The farmer goes, what are you doing? And the kid goes, it stinks in there. It's a lot of crap in there. It stinks. The farmer says, get home. I hired you to muck out the stalls. And kid goes, fine. He goes home, plays his video games. And he goes into the barn, and he hears a happy song. The other kid's singing a song, and he hears, and the kid's singing, and the farmer finds the kid, and he goes, "What's up with you?" And the young man says, "Wow, with all this crap in here, there's got to be a pony in here someplace." And, sometimes life dumps on us. And maybe the process of digging ourselves out is the process of transformation we're being asked to participate in. I had a client, she came to me shattered. Her husband, she just found out about an infidelity with her husband. Shattered. And back to what you were saying, I wasn't going to include this in part of the story, but since you brought it in, she looked at me and she says, "Have you ever had your heart shattered?" And I had. And I was able to look at her and let her feel that that was true and let her know she was going to be okay. Because I'm okay. That was enough for her to get the confidence that she could meet her circumstances because she wanted to go dig out the stall. Of course, her mind told her she's crazy. If you talked to her any friends, they would have talked her out of it. I mean, you don't want to go there. You got to go here. What's true for her, they had a child that they both adored. She loved her husband. He loved her. There was just this thing that happened. And so they both went in the stall and they dug out. And they are the couple now that other couples want to know that they want to have what they have. They changed themselves and their marriage because they dug themselves out of that pile. They're willing to forgive. They're willing to be honest. They're willing to change how they showed up for each other and themselves. Stinky. A lot of tears. A lot of falling down. A lot of standing back up again. A lot of running away. A lot of coming back. Who cares? You do the work if you want the blessings. Who told you, did you get before you came down here, life on planet Earth is a planet of comfort zone and vacation, no hardships at all. Anybody got that travel brochure before you got here? No, it's not that planet, is it? It's a working planet. We do our work. And Gibran said, work is love made manifest, so it's not such a bad thing. So which kid would you want to hire? The one who was with the straw in his mouth or the kid yucking out the stall? Which one do you want to be? I mean, even in the metaphor of him, just think of the strength in his body. I mean, what if that is preparing him for a different job, and doing that with such vigor and enthusiasm is going to get him hired. And, it becomes a stepping stone, like you said, in a whole other direction because he fully participated. Full out participation. So remember, the card I gave you is because we have this habit of thinking, and we think these thoughts, like, I wonder why me, who's to blame? And then because the mind is like a search engine, it'll pull up stories to support whatever the question we ask it, right? I mean, you ask the Google anything and the Google will tell you. So you want to be careful what you ask your search engine brain. So that's why when you turn the card over, so if you find yourself in a crunchy, kind of like grumpy pile of pity, it's like, oh, I must be asking one of those victim questions. What's going on in there? You want to look at how you're talking to yourself. How are you putting meaning on your circumstances? It's like, oh, I'm doing that again. It just becomes a habit. It's like the sound happened. It's like, oh, and it's like, okay, then you calm down because this reactivity happens. Let's calm down, turn the card over and ask a better question. And years ago, the first time I was hired to be a consultant in a corporation, AT&T hired me to do 3 days worth of training with their people. And I had been working personal growth trainings for a while, and so I knew it was easy to translate, but I'd never done corporate. You always have to have a first time. And I was young, and they asked me, and I said, sure, I can do that. I mean, I knew I could, but I hadn't yet, so I had all the heebie-jeebies, lack of confidence. And one morning I had set aside to work on my project, and I'm in bed, and my mind is going, what if they hate you? What if they throw tomatoes at you? What if they won't pay you? What if you embarrass yourself? I mean, all that stuff, and I could not get out of bed. And then I started to laugh because I teach positive focus, which is part of what was going to be the curriculum for the program. And so I said, well, challenge yourself to ask different questions, Leslie. So I started to say, what if they love you? What if they talk about you to other divisions? What if, and I started playing the what if game. And next thing I noticed, I was at the sink brushing my teeth. I hadn't even been aware that I had gotten out of bed to participate in starting my day because it had been really intense in there for a while. So that to me is such a clear example of how we talk to ourselves impact our participation. So pay attention to what you're attending to. And if it's not working for you, change the channel, right? So you have a little cheat sheet. And I suggest you play with the fact that life is really for you. My spiritual teacher loves to end when he speaks, he ends with these words, Baruch Bashan, which means the blessings already are. I think it's from Aramaic. And the first time I heard that, it's like, what are you talking about? The blessings already are. I mean, was one of those koans for me. And I sat with it for a long time. And I really made myself tune into the blessing of those two words. I wanted to know what that meant. And I do now. In every moment, the blessings are present. We have to choose to see where they are. They may not be showing up in the ways we had written down that morning. But has anybody been a little kid? You can all raise your hand now. I asked you another easy question. But has anybody gone on an Easter egg hunt when you were little? Was it ever one of those cold, nasty Easter Sunday mornings? And so you put your little coat on and all your Easter best get all covered up because why? Why was it worth going out? Find the chocolate. And you went out because you were certain that if you looked, you would find the blessings. You're not going to find the eggs in the house. You have to look for them. And you have to have a sensitivity of perception, and you have to have start to fine-tune your awareness and a willingness to see what's there for you. Not what the mind is looking for, but what is being given to you. Does anybody go morel hunting? Those mushrooms? You did? Yeah, I cannot. The first time I only went once. I couldn't see them.
You have to be by a dead elm.
You got to be by a dead elm. You got to be with somebody who was an Indian in another lifetime. We brought in 35 of them. I only saw 2 of them. It's that same thing. It's like, where are they? But if you want them, they're there. So I'm wanting, and that's way more fun to live in looking for the blessings than being grumpy. Life is the way it is. At least I think so. And if you want to have fun with life, that's a great way to do it. So we become who we are because of the resilience of the human spirit. And I want to do a little fun thing right now. But first I want to remind you of this story of this man I had been working with. His name was Robert, and his wife had cancer. And she was very ill. And he came home from work, and she was laying on the couch, resting. And he was happy to see her, but I guess as a habit of their long-term marriage, he started to complain, download his day, if this happened and that happened and this didn't happen. And she looked up at him and she said, you know what, Robert? Problems exist in the world of the living. Right? I mean, that just gave me the chills then, and almost every time I tell that story, it's so powerful. We complain about that we have problems, but the gift of the problems is that we're alive to participate in finding the blessing, the possibility, what's here for me. What if this is a gift? So what I want you to do, just to make it personal, is turn to somebody And why don't you just pair up right now, and then I'll tell you. It's not going to be that personal. You promise all to be confidential. If someone tells you something, I want you to forget about it right away. If you agree to that, raise your hand. What anybody says to you is none of your business. What you say to them is none of your business. It's just an exercise in self-awareness, okay? The person with the shortest hair will speak first. I used to go decide who's going to be person A, and it took so long, so I'm just deciding for you. So, person with the shortest hair goes first, and it's going to go, what is, I'll give you an example. My mom has a cognitive impairment. That's the facts. How I see that is a problem. Only 2 sentences max. 1 is fine. It's not really about telling a story to the other person. I see it as a problem is she's amazingly healthy and she's going to outlast her mind and have a lot of fear about that. Now look at it and how is it a blessing? It has brought me to an awareness of how precious she is, and I go out of my way to connect with her heart to heart because connecting up here doesn't matter anymore. And it's given me this place of finding a sweetness between us that I am celebrating. Do you see that? Same situation. One is the part of my mind, and I have that part that wants to make it a problem. And then the other part is that man part of me that sees it as a blessing. So I want to give you that same gift. Pick one thing. That's it. It's short. No storytelling. Okay? It's not about you telling the other person about you. It's about you becoming more aware inside yourself of the choice we have in every moment with every situation. Okay? So go ahead. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes. When one person's done, then go ahead and switch. Okay? This is a nice way to get you to stop talking. So, how was that? Did anybody have any ahas or insights you'd like to share with us? Nobody turned adversaries to blessings? Yes?
It was a little bit different because I know this person outside of here, so I actually shared how it felt kind of awkward in this moment to kind of go deep and share. And at the same time, I felt that this was a way for me to more connect to myself and be just aware of the awkwardness and be able to share that I'm feeling awkward here. So allowing me to break through my own awkwardness in this moment.
I love that. Wow, so that was beautiful. So the challenge or the problem was, oh, well, this is awkward, and the blessing was, I get to be vulnerable by being honest about my awkwardness.
Yes.
Anybody else? Very nice. Yes?
It seems really helpful just to say it out loud. It's one thing to have, change the language in your own mind, but it's easy to revert back to the victim that way because it sort of waffles back and forth. But to actually say it out loud to somebody else gives it more strength and makes it more realistic.
So I'm going to say what you said so that the audience who's being taped can hear you. So for you, it was helpful saying it out loud because not speaking it out loud, it kind of just keeps repeating itself over and over. So the question I have for you is, what is it? Is it the victim part?
Yes, yeah. Tangible.
Oh, great. So saying it out loud made it more real, more tangible, and you landed in the blessing of the victorious.
Yes.
Beautiful. So you could say it to yourself in the mirror. We do whatever works, right? And you just learn something that works for you. Great. Thank you.
Well, my partner's response to what I said made me really stop and think when I even realized it's not even my problem I'm talking about. It's the worst possible outcome at the end of that problem is what I'm thinking is already real. But she's like, it's not. And I didn't even realize that's what I was doing with it.
That's what I was doing too, right? Afraid that she's going to, and right now it's fine. So
the
it's
actual moment isn't necessarily
beautiful.
that bad. It's where I'm assuming it will go.
Beautiful. Raise your hand if you recognize yourself in that pattern. That's what fear is. It's fantasizing expectations appearing real. Throwing our thoughts into the future, making some horrible thing up, and then buying into it, and then that's our fear. When the reality was, when you were speaking it, you were able to see that it wasn't even in the room at the moment. You were just making it up. Great. And then what, turning that into a blessing or to being victorious, what was that like for you? Or was just the awareness that that wasn't happening your blessing?
Well, I guess what I was saying was, when something's really serious, I'm not just upset about traffic or something, how do you see the blessing, especially when you're in it? But then it's like, no, what I'm thinking, and I know without going into detail, it's not that helpful, but I'm going 20 steps ahead, and that every step is the worst possible outcome. It's like, I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever be at that bad point I'm imagining. So the problem right now is just, if I focus on what's really happening at this moment, it's just making me more grateful for what I do have and how my normal problems really aren't that big a deal. So it's putting life in perspective, I guess.
Beautiful. So that was your blessing, is bringing yourself present and being aware of what's here and now. That's a huge blessing. So when you know, see, everybody's different. We all have our own ways of making ourselves nuts. So it's good to see, and we have all our own ways of changing, finding the Easter eggs. And you have to find out what works for you. That's called self-awareness. So I just give generic tools, and then, I like you to make them personal by giving an exercise. So you can start to see, well, this is something that seems to get me some traction. Like that man saying, speaking it aloud was very helpful. So when you notice yourself going ahead, just calling yourself present, and then I heard you say, and looking at things through the eyes of gratitude. That'll bring you your blessings. That's your doorway to blessings. So interpreting that life is for you and that you can turn anything into a blessing will help you access your resilience. And if you see life as any other way than that, you're doing yourself a disservice, that's okay. Just forgive yourself and then make another choice. Because, we are habituated to look at the worst case. Does anybody know what that's about? It's how the brain is structured for survival. It looks on the horizon for anything that's out of order because it needs to live another day. So it's not going to get lost in the tulips and how nice the sun is. And oh my God, I saw the most amazing rainbow on Saturday. And next thing I know, something jumps out of the bushes and it's dead. It has to be alert for bad things might be happening. That's how we made it on the savannah with a pointy stick. So we just move into forgiveness. It's like that's just part of our humanity. And then we go, I'm doing that again. So we want to bring our awareness to our survival selves. So now we've lifted up into the human by watching and noticing the lower consciousness and going, well, I'm not going to let that part drive my car. I'm not going to let my fear, my awkwardness be more important than my yearning to connect. And we just move through it and come present. and it's just practice, right? It's called loving yourself. So I just want to review what we went over. So change is inevitable. We have the power to change the meaning of anything. Resilient people shared the ability to give positive meaning out of the experience of our lives. Wonder question, what if life is for you? Here to serve you in your ongoing learning, growth, and evolution, lifting you up into an awareness of who you truly are. Like the king, lifting you into your majesty. The blessings already are. We become who we are through the resilience of the human spirit because of adversity. So adversity truly is a blessing when we engage with it correctly. Correctly as in it works for us. Life happens, now what? Acceptance is the master power tool. And whatever you thought was upsetting you, it probably wasn't. So change the story. Get yourself a set of blessing-seeking glasses and go out and have yourself a joyous life. Thank you.